I've been waiting a very long time to meet you.
Welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Harriet, and let's talk about all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in the second episode of Ms. Marvel. And we're going to do a full breakdown of the episode, plus explain the history of Kamala's family, the mystery woman at the end, and how all of this connects to Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain Marvel, and stuff that you haven't even seen on screen yet. First of all, the Marvel Studios opening now features this shot of Dr. Strange from Multiverse of Madness and this shot of Moon Knight. These shots were actually inserted in the last episode, but we missed them. So here's a couple other Easter eggs that we missed. When Kamala is adjusting her outfit to hide her pelvic area, she ties a scarf around her waist, a nod to Carol Danvers' outfit when she was the original Ms. Marvel. Also, the cosplay costume committee wants her to add in a bit of herself into the suit. This is emulating the comics, where she starts off using her powers to transform into a Carol Danvers lookalike before she creates her own suit. And her suit in the comics is modeled off a salwar kameez. This is a traditional Central Asian garb for women. The actor who plays her dad, Mohan Kapoor, is a popular South Asian actor, but he was also the official Hindi dub voice for Dr. Strange.
मेरा नाम है Dr. Stephen Strange और मैं तुमसे कुछ पूछना चाहता हूँ.
Did the driving instructor look familiar to you? Maybe that's because he's Mr. Clark from Stranger Things, and the first words spoken by Amir and Yusef.
Amir, if you don't stop praying long enough to put some food in your mouth, one day you will starve to death.
Are the same words they first spoke in the comic. Back to episode 2. Now the S here in the previously on matches the S in the Ms. Marvel comics logo, and we see these touches all over the show. More recent Marvel shows like Ms. Marvel and Hawkeye have done a great job directly including panels from comic book art, and it looks like Taika Waititi's Thor: Love and Thunder is doing the same. And this is all awesome for longtime comics fans, because for years we've had to watch the movies run away from the comics.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
The music in the opening is the song Feels So Good by Mace, and it's because Kamala's really feeling herself now that she has superpowers and is gonna be famous. She tells Bruno,
well, you didn't see anything? I tried to shrink and fly and talk to ants and none of it worked.
Because in the comic, she actually can shrink herself. And she also says this about Ant-Man.
Because we're both charming and we look a lot younger than we are.
Making a joke about the ageless, immortal being who appears to mortals in the form of Paul Rudd. Next, we're introduced to her other best friend from the comics, Nakia. Now, I think it was smart for the first episode to focus on Bruno and not introduce too many other characters. It would have been overwhelming. Also, this episode is guiding the audience more into her culture, and Nakia gives her someone to speak to about events at the mosque.
You mean they gotta fix our section of this place? But the men's section is pristine.
So Zoe is able to leverage almost dying into gaining new subscribers and instant fame. Now she knows that Kamala protected her, but she chooses to not give her credit.
Nightlight.
This is obviously a nod to Ned's fake name for Spider-Man in Far From Home.
Night monkey.
Night monkey?
But also it makes me wonder, was Zoe trying to protect her secret identity? Or did she just not want Kamala to take attention away from her? Oh, and see this guy with the headphones? His family has a reaction channel on YouTube. Marvel, put me in a show. I could break down the Battle of New York for students in a classroom. I used to be a teacher. This is perfect casting. So last episode we saw Bruno applying to get into Caltech, and in this episode we find out that he got in.
You got it.
The guidance counselor's name, Gabe Wilson, is a nod to G. Willow Wilson, the creator of Kamala Khan. He talks about the call to adventure part of the movies and specifically mentions Star Wars and a movie where Meryl Streep asks you to answer phones for a high-end fashion company, referencing The Devil Wears Prada.
Are you wearing the Chanel boots?
Yeah, I am.
Now this moment, the call to adventure, is the key part of any story and any screenplay.
Oh man, don't talk about screenplays. This one's really frustrating me.
Hey Doug, what's going on?
I was just trying to write my screenplay.
Oh, what's the problem? You trying to think of an ending?
No, I know my story. I just can't figure out this format. I got all these stupid extra buttons, and I got to tab a bunch of times. I don't know the format, but I got a story inside of me that I have to let it out.
Oh, well then you should really try Arc Studio. They're the sponsor of this video. It's the best screenwriting software that I have ever used. It's a great way to get started on your first screenplay or on your 50th. And unlike other softwares, it's very easy to navigate and very intuitive. It actually feels like it was designed by writers. Arc Studio takes the worry out of screenwriting because it does all of the formatting for you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and when you're planning out your story, it has a very vivid and easy to use plot board outline where you can organize your different scenes, and you can even tag different characters to monitor all their story beats. And let's say you're working on a script with someone else. Arc Studio offers real-time collaboration that's very easy, like Google Docs.
Oh man, but I already spent all my money on this other screenwriting software.
Well, not a problem, because you can import scripts from other softwares. Plus, there's a free version of Arc Studio. So, if you want to try out Arc Studio, click the link in the description. You won't regret it. You should get writing today. Next, we go to the opening titles, which say a lot about this episode and Kamala's character. First, the logo is on a knuckle duster, then love heart disco balls because she's about to fall for Kamron. Next, we see a dashboard, a nod to her driving in this car. Now notice the infinity sign, a possible nod to the Infinity Stones, a Ms. Marvel lightning bolt, but also every warning sign is in red, indicating that Kamron has a hidden agenda that we're going to talk about later on. Here's a muscle arm flexing akin to the feminist icon Rosie the Riveter, and a bunch of 8-bit bombs on a platforming ladder game like Donkey Kong. This is foreshadowing how later in the episode Kamala will have to create platforms to travel to the top of this tower and save this stupid kid. We see emojis in the mosque barrier, probably a nod to the girls doing Insta during services, her bedroom, and a font that looks like the teen comedy Saved by the Bell. This episode has lots of similarities to the criminally underrated Shazam movie. There's kids figuring out the extent of powers, and also this.
I saved you.
Only because you almost killed me first.
You electrocuted a bus and almost killed these people.
And then I caught it!
Now, we have a few theories on Kamala's powers, the bangle, and how this will connect to the Marvels that I'm going to talk about at the end of the video. During the roof training, the song is called Goddess by Cruella and Nervo, appropriate since now she's like a goddess and can do anything. There's also a lyric, I Kiss the Ring, which might be a nod to her bangle. There's a poster here for a cereal called Iron Bran, a neat play on Iron Man. And this whole scene,
Let me go. You have to let me go.
is a pretty hilarious version of this.
Let me go.
They notice writing on the bangle, but actually don't think to go translate it.
Looks like Arabic or Urdu. I don't know.
This could be a nod to the runes on Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. The Norse runes on Mjolnir read, he who wields this hammer commands the lightning and the storm, whereas Stormbreaker's runes basically read travel and storm, because it's a hammer that he uses to travel the Bifrost and create thunderstorms. Now I love this entire sequence at the mosque and the Eid Mubarak festival. It demystifies Islam for non-Muslims, including myself. When they're running through the cliques inside the mosque, I was like, oh man, we had the exact same groups inside my church, especially the Illuminantes. This scene also takes place during late afternoon prayers. Now Muslims pray 5 times a day, and communal praying is also encouraged. Also, in places of worship like mosques or temples, you always have to take off your shoes.
Why are they washing their faces and stuff?
Well, mosques and some temples have you perform a wudu, or a ritual washing. It's to purify yourself, like how Catholics will cleanse themselves with holy water before entering the church.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, why do the boys and girls gotta sit in different places?
Well, men and women are always partitioned to maintain modesty. You actually see this practiced in more traditional Jewish services as well.
Wow, we all share so much, and we're all in this little blue dot called Spaceship Earth.
Yes, we are. Now, Kia decides she's going to run for the mosque board, and in the comics, she was a social activist. In the credit sequence, you can see a panel of her saying that change is here. This scene also takes dialogue directly from the comics. Nakia and Kamala are in their Saturday prayers at the mosque when Kamala tells Sheikh Abdullah they can't see him during the lecture, and he explains the reason for the partition.
The partition and the side entrance are there to preserve all our modesty and dignity.
In the hallway, Kamala has to correct her teacher on how to pronounce her name.
Morning, Camellia.
Morning, actually. I've been meaning to tell you for years, my name's pronounced Kamala.
And a lot of people have been incorrectly correcting me on Twitter that her name is pronounced like the vice president. It's not. Her creator, G. Willow Wilson, clarified the pronunciation in a recent tweet. Not that I don't ever pronounce her name wrong, I do it way too much, and I've probably already done it in this video. But it's pronounced Kamala. It's a derivative of the name Kamal, meaning perfection, because her parents knew that she would be their last child. The name Kamala is normally from a Sanskrit origin, not Arabic, hence the different pronunciations. In fact, in the comics, Nakia and Kamala bond over their names not being used commonly in their respective ethnic groups. And here, Kamala says,
Hear the change. The change is here and the change is her, everyone.
which is taken directly from the panel that I mentioned earlier. Now, did any of you think it was weird how Kamala's mom immediately agrees to let her go to Zoe's house for a party?
Please, can I go? Okay.
Yeah, she's supposed to be grounded in big trouble.
Yes, but in the last episode, Kamala mentions that Zoe's mom used to drive her to school, so her parents know their family. So she's allowed to go to Zoe's house. At the party, Kamron jumps off the roof into a pool like Russell Stillwell.
I'm on drugs!
Now the song in this scene is Keep On Moving by B. Stu. The first line is I'm gonna keep on flying, which is perfect for a dude about to jump off a roof, and even more perfect if
I'm on drugs!
At the party, she wears a winter flap cap that she wore in the original comics and in her earliest design sketches. Now, one thing I'm loving about teenagers in the MCU is that they're played by actual teenagers who look their ages, not like 20-somethings who are playing teen.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
And the most relatable teen reaction ever was Kamala after she takes her first sip of alcohol.
Am I drunk?
So relatable. Oh, you guys, I'm so drunk right now. Woo. And And this whole scene with the alcohol is also taken directly from the comics. Kamala asks if there's any alcohol in the orange drink and then drinks it after being lied to. It's not cool. In the car, she and Kamron bond over their mutual love of Bollywood movies. Now, Bollywood is the nickname for Indian movie studios, which actually produce more films every year than Hollywood. They talk about Bazigar and SRK. SRK stands for Shah Rukh Khan, the king of Bollywood. Bazigar was a 1993 Hindi movie which was his breakthrough role as a sole lead. Now, the movie is about a guy seeking to avenge the fall of his family, which could be a parallel to the story that we're about to see, and might be foreshadowing Kamron's secret motivations in this episode. They also talk about a hip-hop group called the Sweatshop Boys, who had a song in the last episode. That group included Riz Ahmed, actor from Rogue One and Venom. And the show continues its brilliant production design choices of using the environment to show text messages, a perfect way to show that Kamala sees this world through a fantastical lens, and that her generation sees the world as an extension of the internet. Am I right? So this Kamron story is playing out very similar to the comics. He was a family friend who moved back to Jersey City. Like Kamala, he was an Inhuman.
What's an Inhuman?
Okay, so it's not that important, but I'll go over it because there will be parallels to all of this in the show. In the comics, thousands of years ago, the Earth was visited by the Kree, who we saw in Captain Marvel and throughout the MCU. They experimented on some humans, giving them dormant superpowers that could be activated with a special fog called a Terrigen Mist. We saw this in the Inhumans and in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So in the comics, Kamala and Kamron are both Inhumans, descended from those original humans the Kree experimented on. So in the comics, Kamron returns home, befriends Kamala, and gives her a ride from school, but then takes her to meet this evil Inhuman gangster called Lineage. We see elements of that in this episode, except he apparently works for her great-grandmother, but more on that at the end of the video. Also, the bangle unlocks some power inside Kamala.
It looks like your power isn't coming from the bangle. It's coming from within you.
So in this way, she's like an Inhuman and inherited powers from her great-grandmother without even knowing it. And the bangle works like the Terrigen Mist. Anyways, Kamala gets home and does her version of the Risky Business song, but to the Ronettes' Be My Baby. This whole sequence looks like a Bollywood super solo extra number, and this purple even matches the color of her powers. Another nod that this is the true power from inside of her, and she's created it around her in this fantasy. And in the fantasy, she draws Kamron to appear like he does in the comics, and they're surrounded by flying sloths, Kamala's favorite animal from the comics, except here they're like cherubs in space. Then her powers manifest in unexpected ways, kind of like any teenager having body issues, like a pimple appearing literally 1 second before you ask Jessica to the homecoming dance. Stupid pimple, you ruined my life. Also, she is wearing a t-shirt with an old school drawing of Black Widow and a replica of Carol Danvers' military jacket, which now includes the insignia of her logo. Nakia's monologue about putting on her scarf serves a couple purposes. Now, it gives us a personal perspective on what it's like for a young Muslim woman.
Like when I put this on, I feel like me. Like I have a purpose.
But also, it inspires Kamala to feel like herself when she puts on a bangle, so she can feel like it's a part of her and not some piece of jewelry that randomly gives her a shiny nose. Now, the scarf that Nakia gives her for her date not a date looks like the pattern of the scarf that Kamala wears in the first issue of her comics. While she's driving, Kamala wears aviator glasses so she can feel like her hero, Carol Danvers. Then she and Kamron get into a deep conversation about their mutual interest in culture, which is always a great feeling.
Finally, someone who speaks English.
They talk about the great Bollywood star Raj Kingo Diva.
That sounds familiar.
That's because it's the name of Kingo, one of the Eternals.
I'm part of the greatest dynasty in the history of Bollywood.
Kamron even says that his mom is a fan of Kingo Sr., a hint that she is way too old to be his mother, unless she's immortal or something. He also name drops the Great British Bake Off.
I'm a huge fan of the Great British Bake Off.
Which is a pretty great show.
Noel, what jelly art would you make?
Nude sculpture of Paul Hollywood.
Oh, what flavour would the nipples be?
Lime.
So at family dinner, we get a little bit more of the family history, like why the family moved to America.
So that our children could be anything that they wanted to be.
Like becoming a superhero. So her dad has this optimistic view of moving to America, whereas her mom always has to keep them grounded and still within the standards and expectations of their culture. So in a lot of ways, Kamala is always feeling pulled between these two cultures. Then they talk about the partition, which frankly is a black mark on human history. Basically, while India won its independence from Britain, Pakistan and India were created as separate nations, with Pakistan primarily being the home of the Muslim population. And this resulted in an enormous refugee crisis, violence, rapes, settlements and thousands of people disappearing. A lot of Muslims from what became the new India fled to Pakistan, and Hindus and Sikhs from what became Pakistan fled to India. Then eastern Pakistan broke off and became Bangladesh after a protracted civil war and Bangladesh genocide in 1971. So think of this in the context of this show. Kamala's grandmother was nearly one of these lost people until a trail of stars led her to her father. A trail of stars that was probably created by Kamala's great-grandmother Aisha, who also had abilities. But from what we gather, she did not always use those abilities honorably and might have even been involved in the underworld. Now, her grandmother's name Sana might be a tribute to Marvel Comics editor Sana Amanat, who edited Ms. Marvel among many other books. When Kamala hears this story, her band activates and she passes out.
Kamala, are you okay, beta?
It's gotta be the evil eye.
And her mom says a line that I think any mom in any culture would say.
Did you not eat anything? Or did you eat too much?
Also, notice that here on her wall she drew herself as Captain Marvel, foreshadowing her eventual superhero identity. The next day, her parents show her just how Jersey they are by extolling their love for Bon Jovi.
Don't question my love for the Captain Kid.
I'll bet you any money we will get a track from Slippery When Wet on this show at some point. Maybe when her mom finally accepts her for who she is. I mean, Living on a Prayer actually is like a perfect choice for the soundtrack of this show. Then we get to Eid, which is basically a 3-day festival that celebrates the end of Ramadan. Ramadan is a period of fasting and prayer, so everyone makes special food for when their families and friends are invited to come over and celebrate. So one of the groups in the mosque are the Illuminantes, and they have this name because they're an exclusive group, but also because they know everything you do before you even do it.
She's going to discover that she doesn't have a ring on her finger. That's what she's going to discover.
Next we go to the Department of Damage Control, which first appeared in Homecoming, but then arrested Peter Parker and his friends in No Way Home. Agent Cleary leans on Zoe just like he did to Ned by starting off like they're friends.
Wait, you're not the Zoe Zimmer. Can we get Ned a snack, please?
Absolutely.
He's been waiting here.
I got you.
Dude, I'm so sorry about that.
He uses the term enhanced individual like we first heard Cap use in Age of Ultron.
We have an enhanced in the field.
And he's being assisted by Elysia Reiner from Orange is the New Black. I was once a PA on a movie with her, and she is the nicest woman in the world. Kamala learns that her great-grandmother had a dark past.
I heard she killed a man.
And this woman is Anjali Bhumani, the voice of the first Indian hero in Overwatch. And this auntie is a staple in Bollywood cinema. She's your mom. Then Kamala gets her next superhero gig, saving a dumb kid. Dumb kids in superhero movies are great. Like this dumb kid in Superman 2, who's chilling on the wrong side of a rail at Niagara Falls.
Hey, Mom, look! Uh-huh. Yeah, honey, that's nice.
To get the kid to stop panicking, she says,
Just calm down and think happy thoughts, right?
a reference to Peter Pan, another child hero with superhuman abilities.
You think of a wonderful thought.
Any happy little thoughts?
Uh-huh.
So his response
Ice cream pizza!
ends up blowing up the internet as every photo of the rescue is intercut with a meme about ice cream pizza. After saving him, she strikes a superhero pose.
It's a fighting pose. You're a total poser.
Notice that her salwar kameez is poking out of the jacket, more akin to her costume from the comics, showing her evolution from Carol Danvers and embracing her own identity. Then she loses her concentration when she sees a vision of who I think is her great-grandmother, where she is wearing the same red clothing that was in the box that was from her nanny. And there's a few cool flourishes in the credits, including her signature flying sloths, her red Chuck Taylors, her dad as the Hulk, and this graffiti of her first comics cover. But the big reveal from this ending is Nimra Buka. She's a legendary Pakistani actress who I think is playing her great-grandmother, who is alive, and like the immortal being known as Paul Rudd, she is unravaged by time.
But why is that her grandma? She could just be some evil lady.
Yes, but I think it's her great-grandmother because the first time she appears is right after the story about the train station, and we hear the sound of a train. We can also hear the train whistling in the background at the end when Kamron introduces her as his mom.
It's like you to meet my mom.
So let's assume for a moment that this is her evil great-grandmother. She would have the same cosmic energy inside of her that Kamala has. But maybe without the bangle, she has no way to activate it. The bangle works like the Terrigen Mist in the comics, unlocking the power that Kamala inherited from her ancestors. Here it has the added bonus of embracing her family's heritage and history while also forging a new American identity for herself. Very on theme. This is kind of like Wanda Maximoff. Agatha shows her that she was born as a witch with abilities, but it took the Mind Stone to unlock her full potential. This would also mean that Kamala has a crush on her great uncle, but I've seen worse. Maybe Kamron also inherited powers, which is how he was able to jump off of Ruth unscathed. Now it seems like Kamron was assigned to getting close to her because his mother knew that the bangle had been activated. She says,
I've been waiting a very long time to meet you.
which again makes me think that this is her great-grandmother. She could be a different version of the villain Lineage, who I mentioned earlier. Lineage had the ability to access all the knowledge of his ancestors, which would also tie in well with this show's themes about carrying on the memories of your culture and ancestral trauma from events like the partition. The bangle might also have some ancestral knowledge stored within it that also connects to her great-grandmother. One possibility is that her great-grandmother is actually a Kree soldier, kind of like we saw in Captain Marvel, and the bands would activate her powers. See, the Kree were big on genetic experimentation, so this would make sense. It would also connect Kamala to Captain Marvel and give her a reason to leave Earth in the sequel. So, the bangle could be the MCU version of a couple of different objects in the comics. One are the quantum bands, which are worn by the hero Quasar so he can protect the universe. And then there are the nega bands, a Kree relic worn by Captain Marvel. Now, these bands actually trapped him in another dimension called the negative zone, but he could trade places with the character named Rick Jones. It could be that when Kamala has these visions, she's actually seen through the negative zone. So the theory could go like this. The Kree genetically engineer soldiers to live on Earth, and they give them these bands that harness their power. Kamala's great-grandmother turned on the Kree or abandoned her mission because she fell in love and had a family, but the Kree came looking for her, so she disappeared. Come to think of it, that's very much the plot of Captain Marvel and sort of the plot of Coco and also Turning Red. So this woman in the car could be her great-grandmother or the Kree villain who killed her great-grandmother. Maybe Aisha's last act was to make sure that her daughter got on the train with one of her bangles. So you remember at this point the Kree are actually in decline. As we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy, they just lost a 100-year war with Xandar, and now the Skrulls are back in full force as we saw in Far From Home. So these bands could actually be the key to unlocking some kind of important Kree weapon that would put them back on top of the galactic pecking order. But that's just our thoughts and theories. If you thought of anything else, let us know in the comments below, or you can @ me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.